The Pittsburgh Steelers have now lost 4 games in a row. Tonight they lost to the Cincinnati Bengals 19-17. It was some of the worst coaching that you've ever seen in your life. Mike Tomlin and Terrell Austin, they thought it would be a good idea to come into this game and have Corey Trice manned up with Jamar Chase. As we all know, he got eaten alive on the first touchdown pass of the game. The Bengals went right down the field, and Jamar Chase is manned up with Corey Trice, eats him alive for a score. Jamar Chase should have had 2 touchdowns, another one he dropped in the back of the end zone. To go into this game and have Corey Trice manned up with Jamar Chase, the Cincinnati Bengals' number 1 weapon, is some of the worst coaching that you will ever see in your life. So Joey Porter was on T. Higgins. I know T. Higgins is dangerous, but Jamar Chase is always the first read. So I don't know why you would have Porter on T. Higgins. Then T. Higgins gets hurt. And instead of Tomlin immediately taking Joey Porter and putting him on Jamar Chase, he pretty much lets 10 to 20 plays go by before he mentally focuses and makes the change. Corey Trice got eaten alive tonight. And to go into this game, the most important game of the year, with Corey Trice manned up on Jamar Chase, is horrible coaching. It's inexcusable. There's no excuse for it. Absolutely none. I don't care if any other receiver on the Bengals ate the Steelers alive tonight. Jamar Chase, just like with the Chiefs, where Travis Kelce can't beat you, you don't let Jamar Chase beat you. You make another player step up for the Bengals. Mike Tomlin handed this game to the Cincinnati Bengals tonight, and the score would have been a lot worse. A lot of the times, the Bengals couldn't capitalize in the red zone, so they kicked field goals. I think they had 4 or 5 field goals. It's irrelevant. The score should have been a lot worse than what it is. Russell Wilson, we didn't have 100 yards of total offense until 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Russell Wilson, up until the fourth quarter, only completed 5 passes. George Pickens, the legend in his own mind, the little queen, the guy that thinks he's the best receiver in the league, he dropped 3 passes tonight. He's also arguing with fans in the stands. Pat Freiermuth had to come over and control him. It's time to say goodbye to George Pickens. He's not the answer. Neither is Russell Wilson. I've made multiple videos on this saying the same thing over and over. Don't believe the Russell Wilson hype. As the season goes on, because he's old and his legs are shot, he can't throw the ball downfield anymore. And that's exactly what's happening. I said before this game, if the Steelers have to throw the ball 25 to 30 times, they're going to lose the game. They threw the ball tonight 31 times. They completed 17 passes for 148 yards and a touchdown. Horrible game plan. It doesn't get any worse than this. Pat Freiermuth had a good game. Of course, at the 4th and 12, when they need him the most to kick a field goal, he drops a pass. Calvin Austin fumbled a punt. Jaylen Warren gets stopped on 4th down on 4th and 1. The Steelers were atrocious tonight. The offensive line was terrible. They didn't get any push. Najee Harris had 12 carries for 36 yards and 1 touchdown. Just absolutely a pitiful performance by the Pittsburgh Steelers, and it's not going to get better. We're not going to miraculously turn this around in the playoffs. I hear Steelers fans and a lot of ESPN analysts saying the Steelers want to take on the Texans. The Texans are going to blow the Steelers out of the building because the Texans have an elite quarterback and the Steelers don't. The only thing that kept the Steelers in the game tonight was the Steelers' defensive line. Cam Hayward had 3 deflected passes. Hootie, my nickname for Cam, Hootie and the Blowfish. I call him Hootie. He's playing terrific football. He's 35 years old. This is one of the best seasons of his career. Constant pressure from him, from TJ Watt, even though he didn't get a sack. Nick Herbig had a sack. They had 4 sacks in total tonight, the Steelers, and they pressured Joe Burrow all night long. If it wasn't for that pressure, the Steelers would have got blown out of the building. The front 4 or 5 for the Pittsburgh Steelers were the only players tonight that did their job. Everybody else was atrocious. Keanu Benton had a sack. Patrick Queen had a sack. Preston Smith had a sack. Nick Herbig had a sack. If it wasn't for these guys pressuring the quarterback, the Bengals could have put up 40. There's this one package where Nick Herbig, Alex Highsmith, Cam Hayward, and TJ Watt are all rushing the passer. I love seeing Herbig get more snaps. It's a good way to bring pressure. The Steelers finally blitz a linebacker. Patrick Queen blitzes a couple times tonight. He had a sack. He pressured the quarterback, collapsed in the pocket. You need to change up the defensive scheme. Do we need to bring back Dick LeBeau, Tomlin? Do we need to bring back the legend, Dick LeBeau? Because if you think every week, week in and week out, we're just going to line up and kick your ass, and we're not going to scheme, and TJ Watt's going to be on the same side of the field every night, rushing the passer. That doesn't work. This isn't high school, college, Pop Warner. And as good as TJ Watt is, he would be so much better in a defense that schemed, moved him around, gave different looks, blitzed different guys. We don't do anything. We are one of the easiest defenses in the league to figure out. We do nothing special. We don't change anything. Week in and week out, it's the same thing. At a certain point tonight, the Bengals had 3 guys blocking TJ Watt. 3 guys. Just anything that you could have thought to go wrong tonight went wrong. Horrible. Absolutely horrible. George Pickens drops 3 passes, fighting with fans in the stands. Then he doesn't run the route deep enough when they could win the game, the Steelers. The ball falls incomplete. He flops on the ground. He's a legend in his own mind. Jamar Chase is the best receiver in the league. I wouldn't even put George Pickens in the top 10 as best receivers. The other average player in the NFL who flashes ability from time to time. That's what George Pickens is. He's nothing special. To say goodbye to Russell Wilson. Time to say goodbye to George Pickens. Enough is enough already. For Tomlin to go into this season thinking that Russell Wilson can outgun Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, you're going to have to beat these quarterbacks to get to the Super Bowl. Remember, Steelers fans, remember this. The Pittsburgh Steelers at one point could have got Baker Mayfield. Could have got Gardner Minshew. Now, Gardner Minshew's having his problems on the Colts, but he's a hell of a lot better than Russell Wilson. Baker Mayfield could have signed him for $1 million coming off the injured reserve. It's amazing that the Pittsburgh Steelers can find a safety in Alaska that nobody ever heard of, and he can become a Pro Bowl Hall of Fame player, but they can't find a quarterback. And you know what I think this goes back to? They didn't draft the hometown kid, Dan Marino. So I think they're cursed at this point. Dan Marino, a guy that grew up 3 miles from the stadium, went to Pittsburgh, grew up a Pittsburgh Steeler fan, one of the all-time greatest quarterbacks ever, but the Pittsburgh Steelers fell for the rumor that Dan Marino was smoking weed, so they took a pass, and here we are today in 2025 with Russell Wilson, a 35-year-old quarterback who can't throw the ball more than 25 yards down the field. That's where we're at right now. The Pittsburgh Steelers couldn't get the running game going. If they can't run the ball, they can't win any football games. Our offensive linemen, if you see this video, I don't know if you ever heard of Westside Barbell in Ohio. You need to train there. You need to get stronger. We need to maul people in the run game. When the Steelers were winning Super Bowls, the type of linemen they had, absolutely mauling people. It was going to be a physical smash mouth day. We have all guys that weigh over 325 pounds, and they're a finesse offensive line, and you can't figure out why we can't win a game. The season can't end soon enough. I called this from the beginning. They're going to lose 5 games in a row, and it's going to be over. A wrap. It's done. Going into next year, you have major decisions to make. If Mike Tomlin decides to give Russell Wilson 2 years, $25 million, and extend George Pickens with huge money, and it fizzles out again next year, it's time to say goodbye to all three of them. They didn't do anything. In the first quarter, the first half, the Pittsburgh, they look like they would rather be somewhere else. The body language, walking back and forth to the huddle, there was no sense of urgency, no sense of we need to get this fixed so we can go into the playoffs on a positive note. It just seemed like guys had a better place to be. That's how it came across to me. Joe Burrow was 37 for 46, 277 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. The interception kind of bounced off his receiver. And, of course, Beanie Bishop had an interception. A guy that's buried on the bench for some reason has 4 interceptions. I really can't figure Tomlin out. Najee Harris shouldn't be getting the bulk of the carries. He gets the bulk of the carries week in and week out. He's a fullback. That's what he is in this offense. Jaylen Warren needs to get the ball 25 times. He's faster. He moves better laterally. But no, every week we'll start Najee, and Najee will have 30 yards. Joe Burrow also should have had another touchdown throw to the back of the end zone when Jamar Chase dropped the ball. So this is what happens when you have an elite quarterback. When you have an elite quarterback like Joe Burrow, no matter how bad your team is, you're in every single game. And the Steelers are the exact opposite. Great pressure. Our secondary is not great by any stretch of the imagination. But if we had an elite quarterback with the surrounding cast that we have on offense and defense, we would have a possibility to win every single game. We don't have any chance to win any game. We have the worst quarterback in the AFC right now. The worst one. It's not even debatable. Jamar Chase, 10 catches for 96 yards, 1 touchdown. Again, he should have had 2. Mike Gesicki, 8 catches for 68 yards. T. Higgins was 4 for 53, got hurt, left the game early. The Bengals also sacked Russell Wilson 4 times. Hey, the defense, the Pittsburgh Steelers defense can only do so much. You know, the best defense is a great offense. The fact that the Steelers' defense is ranked so statistically high tells you how good these guys actually are, because the Steelers' offense constantly goes 3 and out every series, and they're right back on the field. So for them to be, top 7 in points allowed, it tells you what a great unit they are. And I'm not talking about the defensive backs. Porter he's an above average corner. After that, we're in trouble. Minkah Fitzpatrick, sometimes he's a superstar, sometimes he's super quiet. Deshaun Elliott, they're above average players. After those 3 defensive backs, the drop-off in the secondary is huge. It's tremendous. And Beanie Bishop, the only guy that intercepts passes, for some reason, Mike Tomlin doesn't want to play him. The coaching tonight was absolute. The game plan for you, if I'm the Rooneys, I call Mike Tomlin into my office, him and the defensive coordinator, and I say, your game plan going into this game was to leave Corey Trice on Jamar Chase all night long, one-on-one. Do I need to bring Dick LeBeau back? Absolutely horrible coaching. Handed the game over to the Bengals. You know what? Maybe racist Ryan Clark can call Mike Tomlin, and Mike Tomlin can breathe life into his team. Ryan Clark telling everybody the Steelers are Super Bowl bound. For anybody to think the Steelers were going to the Super Bowl this year, wasn't watching the tape. Look at the teams that they beat leading up the first half of the season. Jets, Giants, Raiders, Chargers. These are not good football teams at all. Yeah, they beat Baltimore. But for the most part, in the beginning of the season, they did not play good football teams. And we, the Steelers, are not a good football team. We have a bad quarterback. We're not coached well. Did you see the incident in the media with George Pickens the other day when he got an attitude because he thought Russell Wilson was talking about him. If you think that this doesn't affect the team, these little attitudes in the media, these little subtle gestures of hostility towards your teammate, if you think that doesn't hurt the team, then you don't understand football and the locker room. It's time to say goodbye to Russell Wilson and George Pickens.